I am slowly but surely going in, removing my summer show, even though it might be painful. I'm removing the show from one area, switching that area over into my fall display. And today we actually had planned to come out and work in the garden beds, but it's going to be raining off and on today, and I don't necessarily want to get muddy. And I feel like with the area that we were working in, it just wouldn't have worked out for us. Pivot it a little bit. So we are going to start transitioning this area over here in the garden. We're also going to start working on some containers for our other area. You just seen the first one that we just did for that area. Also, we're going to be transplanting some plants today. It's an overcast day. It's going to be raining today. It's going to be raining tomorrow. So that makes for a great day to go in and do some transplanting. We'll start off with getting an arrangement together for this table here. And the containers that I wanted to use, they're in another area. So let's go grab them. These are the containers that I wanted to use, but we're not going to be able to use them because I never pulled out the tulip bulbs that were in here for the springtime, and excuse me, hyacinth and whatever other bulb I had in here. I never pulled it out, and they've been sitting in here over the summertime, for the rest of spring, the summertime. So let's go and grab the containers that we're actually going to be using. We're going to just use these two containers right here. They're already clean. We don't have to worry about having soil in there that had bulbs in there. So we'll just get these two out. Since I have a ton of containers, what I like to do is I like to house my containers inside of different curio cabinets, shelves, or whatever have you. That way they're tucked away, and in certain areas I don't mind about them being on full display, but in other areas I really kind of want them to just be, you know, out of the way. So I like to find cabinets like these that fit into the design of the room, and then I can have it just full of containers. We'll set this container off to the side. We'll start with this one right here. For both of these arrangements, we are going to be putting both of them in the area. Now, I know I said that we were going to plant up an arrangement for the larger table, but anytime I do the larger table, I like to also go in and do an arrangement for the smaller coffee table that sits in front of that bench in that area. So we're going to flip that area over for fall. Let me show you the plants that we're going to be using. Actually, before I show you that, let me cut some screen, because we do have to put a little bit of window screen in the bottom of all of these containers. So in order for me to keep my soil in, I use a window screen. Now, you don't have to use window screen. You can definitely use a coffee filter. And what that does, especially when you're sitting your containers on top of a table where you necessarily don't have a saucer in the bottom of them, what you can do is you can take a coffee filter. They work good, but they do tend to hold a little bit more water. So in the event of terracotta, it may also be a good thing, especially if you struggle with, you know, keeping your containers well watered. So you can use a coffee filter. You can use window screen. I mean, the possibilities are endless. And some people just go ahead and plant the container up without actually putting any type of, you know, filter in the bottom of the hole here. And so the reason why we do that is because once we water, sometimes with the water coming out the bottom of it, the soil ends up coming out of the bottom of it too, and it can clog your containers. So that's one thing that I like to use. I have my window screen right here, and I'll just go in and just make a real quick cut real quick. In the bottom of it, and it doesn't take much. I kind of like to make it a little bit larger than the hole that is going to go in, so I just cut it in squares, and it works out great. So just a little small size like this works good. And then the hole, it just goes right over the hole here. And then you pop your soil down on the inside of the hole, and that prevents any soil from getting out, keeps your soil in. Now for our soil, let me go get some more soil. Ooh, baby, that was heavy. Okay. All right, we got our soil in both of the containers. Now what we'll do is we'll get the plants. We are going to build both of these containers up. They are definitely going to look like sisters, but not twins. We are going to have to do a little bit of work. So let's go get the plants that we're going to be using for these containers. So here are some of the plants that we're going to use, and this is going to be absolutely gorgeous. We are going to work for the look a little bit, and you guys, I have the knife. Now y'all know when the knife come out, baby, Rebecca always say down in the comment section, baby, when the knife comes out, honey, you already know we getting ready to cut up. So let me put this back. This is some of the plants we're going to use because we do have to do a little bit of work here, and we are going to be splitting and dividing. You guys, use plants, utilize plants that when you use them, you stretch your budget. You get free plants in the way of division. But anywho, what we're going to do, we're going to pop this out of the can real quick, and we're going to divide these, and we're going to get the plants that we need out of this, and we're going to save. I don't care what she do, baby. I'm thrifting in my garden. I always do that. No matter what season of the year, I always talk about saving money. Oh, yeah, honey. We can get some good plants up out of here. Okay, so when you're dividing your plants, start by going in the middle and get down to the soil line. Get down to the nitty gritty. Get down in there, and you want to take your knife and you just split. So now you'll have two parts here. And as far as the roots down at the bottom, you see how compacted these are? We're just going to take these, and I'll set this off to the side for right now, and we're just going to just shave off the bottom of these. So, okay. So again, what we're going to do, we're going to come in, and we're going to just split these again. So now we have two plants. Okay. And we'll clean up a little bit as we go. So here's another plant right here. Okay, right here. Same thing, clean up as we go. Taking off anything that doesn't look attractive. All right, now what we're gonna do, okay? Now, we'll look at our clumps, and we kind of want to go for and match them to the ones that kind of look full, put those together. Okay. And we do have one excess clump, and I guess we could have taken this and split that and made 6 plants here. By dividing the plants, we save money, and we're also able to stretch our budget. Those plants came in at $5.98 just for that one little bundle. But you see, we've gained 6 plants. So we can use 2 per each container, we can use 3 per each container, and now we can multiply that, and then we have enough plants for 2 containers. So I definitely believe in stretching your garden budget. Even if I had a budget to where I'm spending $100,000, I'm going to be thrifty. I'm going to thrift in some type of way. I'm going to save money where I can save money. So now what we'll do from here, we'll just work through and start focusing on the first container that we're going to be doing, this one right here. For right now, we are going to set the containers right here. The 2 containers behind me that's flanking this bench over here. I'm going to plant these 2 up. It shouldn't take us long to do it because we have so much more that I want to get finished. I need to get as many of my planters planted up today, otherwise I'm going to fall behind. And I definitely don't want to fall behind when it comes to switching out my fall show, because fall is such a short season. So the first thing I'm going to have to do, the soil line is down, so I'm going to have to fill these up with some soil. And so let me go get that and we'll just get started. Both of these containers are slightly different. I used the huge cabbage where the umbrella of the cabbage encompasses the majority of this container here. Around the edge, I came in and I used the beautiful pansy that we've been using and just kind of tucked them in wherever I could see soil at. Now, some of these cabbages are a little bit tattered. I'm not necessarily worried about that. As the cabbage starts to push out and less soil is revealed, I'll come in and I'll snip this off. But for right now, I'm really not worried about the damages here. We're also using the drape in the pansy here. So this was a real inexpensive way in order to just dress up a container and easily flip the area over to fall. Now we'll get all of this cleaned out here. And I brought out more cabbages than I actually needed in this area, but hey, I still have a ton more planting, so these are coming handy. I'm rushing because it's feeling like it's getting ready to rain. Now, oftentimes when we have hurricanes, you all know how it is. They come up, they make their way up, and you know, sometimes the hurricanes will turn into a tornado. You know, the further that it gets up north, it turns into a tornado. They're not really forecasting for that. So let me get this out of here. Let me set the containers in their place here on the different tables. I wanted to get this table right here wiped down really quick. Let me just put this up real quick. I'm not sure if the drips of rain that I'm feeling is from the tree blowing, but let's head in, let's plant up another container, and then we'll come back and finish this area because my goal is to get as much of this area planted up as I can today. But in the meantime and in between time, we got to work in between the rain. We'll start out by getting our container. I have this gorgeous flat of pansies. We're going to be using these beauties, and they are going to just complement the arrangement, the flow, the feel. They're going to give us a mix up of texture here, and I feel like it's going to be much needed, but it's also going to brighten the arrangement and make it more cheerful. These pansies are absolutely gorgeous. This is our pansy that we're going to be using. Of course, it's calling for full sun, but keep in mind when you're doing your containers for the fall time, you don't necessarily have to worry about space or light requirements because your days are shorter. So therefore, the energy that the sun is going to put out is less. Now, one of the things about the primrose pansy, I like to use this in the fall in lieu of my white. So you know how sometimes, when you use white plants, it kind of brings on a different feel, a different vibe. A lot of times, oftentimes when I'm using a plant that requires or doing an arrangement that requires a white plant in the fall time, this is like my go-to that I like to use because although when you look at it, and as it starts to fade, some of the flowers look like they are a very deep yellow, but for the most part, it looks like a pale, like an antique white, if you will. So we'll be using this, we'll incorporate it, and it'll definitely give us the look that we're going for with this arrangement here. So for comparison here, if we look at the blooms here, you see how it's you can see the yellow undertones, the cream undertones for sure, but it gives you more of that white feel. So same thing here. It looks kind of like a white, but it's more of a white that's appropriate to use in the fall time. And then here's one that's more of the deep color. And you have some that color up deeper than this right here. But for the most part, this is about how deep they'll get. Maybe a little bit darker, but that's what we're looking at. So that's what I mean by it gives you more of that antique white feel, more appropriate for the fall. This is the container that we're going to be using. It has that beautiful moss look, the age look that I just love on my pots. And it actually is terracotta. I've had this for years, so it's no telling who the maker is. But what I love about it, it's a low bowl, but it's very deep. You can literally just pack pansies in or any type of plant, so it's perfect to sit on a table and such. I have 2 of these containers, so we're going to just start planting it up. We are going to be using a little bit of screen in the bottom of the planter. If you're new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. I do a ton of container gardening. I garden in a USDA zone 6B, and I love to container garden. Container gardening is my jam. I just love it. It's just something about container gardening that just moves me, so I just love it. It's beautiful. I'm gonna have to go soil shopping again because I am completely out. I am also going to be using this obelisk here. I've had these obelisks for years, so I'm not really sure as to where I got them from. I have a pair of these, so anytime I buy obelisks, very rarely will you see me buy just one. I typically try to buy one pair, or I will try to buy 4 if they have 4, or I'll buy 6. Like I have, we'll just get off my little soapbox when it comes to obelisks and things, but we'll go ahead and start planting this beautiful arrangement up. is our arrangement here, and it is absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. I came in, I used pansies, and I used cabbages here. I also used the obelisk, and then in addition to using an obelisk, we use the same container as the first container that we used at the very beginning of the video. I'll get the other container on the table so you all can see a side-by-side comparison, because although they seem like they're the same, they're two completely different containers, two completely different looks here, and I just absolutely love it. I'm totally 100% obsessed with this. Scoot this over just a bit. For a side-by-side comparison of both of these arrangements, I absolutely adore them both. For this arrangement here, it has more cabbages than the other arrangement. The other arrangement, in the spaces in between the cabbages, we used some pansies, but I think they both serve their own place. I did not want both of these arrangements to be absolutely the same. I wanted them both to hold their own because they're going into two places, two different places. I wanted one section to give a nod to the other section, but I wanted them to flow together seamlessly without having to come in and do the same exact arrangement in both containers. Now, although we do have two obelisks that are both the same, and we do have two containers that are both the same, they're not competing. Now, we are going to be setting these off to the side. The area where we are going to be putting these at is going to see some amazing changes, and I don't want to put these out there necessarily yet because I haven't pull all of the summer containers in that area. So we'll just set these off to the side, and when that area gets to the point where I bring these containers out, they'll be perfect. It's going to be gorgeous how everything just flows together. Now, one thing about these containers, they look light, but they are heavy. They're heavy, they're manageable, but definitely it's not something that I want to keep moving around. All right, so I do, however, I guess I should have did this beforehand. These obelisks here, one, let me take this off. All right. All right, quick and easy fix. Now that we have this container done, I do want us to work a little bit with the hydrangea, because our main focus for our hydrangeas right now is not necessarily what's going on top of the container. I mean, granted, we are looking at the growth on top, but right now we really want to focus on the hydrangea roots. The roots are going to be so important in order to make sure we get a display. Now, let me go ahead, set this off to the side in the waiting area where it's going to be at. Last time we checked in on our hydrangea cuttings, we bumped them up to these containers right here. I showed you all the way that I do my mixture when I'm dealing with my hydrangea cuttings to progress them along. And we went in, we gave them the first fertilization, and look what we have here. Look at this. Let me scoot this back a bit. You can see we have some growth. Do you see that? Let me turn it here. So it's looking good. It's progressing along. Same thing here. If you look right here, you can see the smallest amount of growth there. So I also get asked a lot about what I do for fungus gnats. Now, do you see how dry these containers are? If we pop this out here, I'm going to do it over top of the can. See how dry that is? put that back in there. My best method for fungus gnats, one is going to be prevention. With your fungus gnats, you don't want to create an environment that they like, and they like a moist environment. Sometimes we can baby along our propagations, we can baby along our seedlings, and it just creates the perfect environment that a fungus gnat wants to live in. So one of the things that I do in order to prevent fungus gnats is, one, I let my seed trays, I let my propagations, I let my indoor house plants dry out in between watering. Now, sometimes that does come to haunt me. For example, we had an extended amount of time away from our home, and a lot of my things, they did not make it because they were already on the drier side. So I like to keep things on the drier side, so it can backfire on you. But for the most part, I typically don't deal with fungus gnats. You can take the mosquito bits when you first pot up everything, mix that in with your soil mixture, and that can help you prevent any type of larva from living in the soil here. Now, we are going to be doing the next step here with our propagations. Look at this one. Now, this is, to me, is gorgeous. We have some nice branching. In the middle of us doing everything else that we have going on, we are going to come in and we are going to water these in really quick. So, distilled water or whatever you've been using to water your propagation plants, just continue to use it. So I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to water in the middle. So we're going to just pour this in here, and we want our hydrangea cuttings to take up all of this moisture. A little bit more. I'll pour a little bit more in there. I pretty much keep them in the same environment. The temperature in this room probably is about 80 degrees in here in this one plant laboratory. I'm gonna give them a little bit more water because they are on the dry side. You guys seen when I pulled them out. And then also, one thing to keep in mind was that we used a lot of perlite. So the perlite is going to keep your plants on the drier side as well. So keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to the amount of soil that I use compared to the amount of perlite, I want to say we have about 44 to a 56% mix. So that's kind of about how I do it. So we'll let these soak in, and then we'll head to the next project, and we'll come back and grab these and do our next step. Comment below and let me know, are you doing hydrangea propagations? Have you been following along? I'm going to move this container back to right here on the corner, but I am going to take the gar out. The gar has to go. Oh, I hope, you know what, we'll cut it out. I am going to go ahead and move these containers out of the water. They're well hydrated. I had them soaking, if you will. We went in, we fertilized them to go ahead and give them enough energy to be able to bloom, continue to bloom throughout the season. But we're going to get them in the place where they're going to be at. And these containers are extremely heavy because they're well hydrated, one. And not only are they well hydrated, they look so much better because I had actually let them dry down. So let's get these in their place. The mom is definitely going to love the excess moisture. It's definitely screaming fall. The colorway that we use over here in this area, we use the deep purples, we use pink, we also use foliage, depending on where you're from. They had a purple undertone, but then we also use a lot of green in this area to give it a juxtaposition with color. I'm excited about the plantings over here and the different containers. With the first container, I did have to swap out the Gara that we had in this arrangement here because I waited too long to water it after we transplanted. But at the same time, because that heavy container was inside of my greenhouse, it was no way I was going to be able to pick it up. But then as I seen that the container was actually struggling, I said, you know what, forget it. Picked it up very easily because at that point the soil was dried out and I was able to pick it up effortlessly. Got it out here, and then I went ahead, I popped out the Gara and I came back in with a beautiful cabbage, and I love it because you can see how this color, the cabbage here, repeats itself along with the purple pansies. Now this pansy is completely different from the other pansy that I have, so let's go take a look at it. This pansy right here is completely different than the one here in this container, and here's our pansy. Can you see it? And actually these should be turned this way, and I have a leaf inside of here as well, so these should definitely be turned this way. So it's completely different than the other pansies that we have been using, but it has again that deep purple, that blotch yellow, and then the purple in it. But as you can see, we again come in and we repeat our cabbages here. And I'm so excited about the look. Now I can see that I am starting to get a little bit of stress here from my mom's where it's reverting back. And a lot of times you'll see that if your mom actually dries down. But I knew that I was going to be moving this arrangement, so I let it dry down in order to make sure I would be able to lift the container up. So by it reverting back, what you'll see is that your bloom will be different than your other blooms, but it's okay, it's fine. I'm not necessarily worried about it. It's just going to give it more character and add to the look. In this container right here, we did one large cabbage, and then we came in and we draped the bottom of both of the containers with just pansies. Now for our arrangement right here that graces our tabletop here, our coffee table, I did a polka dot plant. We cut them down severely so you kind of see that foliage just coming out, peeking out, giving us a little bit of elevation right here. So we used the polka dot plant. We alternated them with the cabbage, and the cabbage has a magenta purple undertone to it. And then we came in and we used the pansy, just popped 2 of them in here, and so the pattern just kind of repeats itself. And even though we have the same container here, we use a completely different look, but we use the same components with the exception of our alyssum, and I'll show you that in this other container here. With our container right here, we use pretty much the same components. Now, I use the polka dot plant on the inside of this container here as our thriller. Then our cabbage here, we came in and we alternated the cabbages with a cabbage and an alyssum, and then we used that beautiful pansy. And that's what it looks like all the way around the container. And I do have a pansy that I could have picked out prior to, but that is our arrangement and I love it. Which one of these 2 containers here do you like the best? So this is our area. I feel like we're off to a good start. We're transitioning our garden over to its fall look, and I'm super excited. But there were so many things that I had to get done today in order to make sure that I don't fall behind. I'm trying to really stay on a strict schedule. Now that I've showed you this area here, we're going to head in and we're going to work with some hydrangea cuttings. But before I do that, I do want to clean off this bench here. I'll just get as much of this as I can off without pulling out the blower. But since I got the containers here, I might as well try to get, you know, make it look as nice as I can. I gathered the supplies for us here. We have these hydrangeas from propagation. Now let's go get the other ones. All of our water is pretty much soaked up. We have some moisture that has been retained here. So now we'll grab these and the water, because remember, whatever water you've been using, you want to use that to fertilize. So we'll grab both. I went ahead and grabbed another jug of distilled water because we're going to just go ahead and mix up an entire solution for our fertilization for our hydrangeas this week. Now, these hydrangea cuttings are doing really well. We have 7 of them. We moved them up to this container right here. We had 7 and we still have 7. I've been very diligently making sure I'm going in and keeping them watered because this is going to be part of my next year's show. So every year in my garden, I take propagations without fail. And when I have a year where my hydrangeas don't push out those beautiful pink and blue blooms that we so love, I cut and I cut and I cut and I take as many propagations because I know the displays that I'm going to be wanting to do is going to require a lot of hydrangeas. So last year we took so many cuttings on camera, but we took more of them off the camera in order to be able to produce the show that we had this spring here. And if I must say, it was absolutely beautiful, or at least I thought it was. Drop down in the comment section and let me know what you thought about the show that we had with our hydrangeas. And one of the things about your hydrangeas, when you take your hydrangeas from cuttings, you can almost treat them like an annual, if you will, if you are in a small garden where you don't have room, because hydrangeas get so huge. And I don't think that a lot of people really give hydrangeas the actual space that they need in a garden when they're planted in ground. Now, granted, when you plant a hydrangea in a container, the behavior is going to be completely different than when your hydrangeas are in the ground. Completely different foliage habit or foliage, depending on where you're from. Completely different bloom habit. And when they're in the container, think of them more like a specimen, if you will. Now, what we're going to be using this week, we are going to be using some liquid seaweed. And I get asked oftentimes down in the comment section, what fertilizer do you use? Well, that's such a broad question because one, when it comes to the fertilizer that I like to use on my different containers, if I'm trying to get them to bloom, I use whatever type of bloom booster, if you will, that I have on hand. The brand to me doesn't necessarily matter. And then I also have some fertilizer that I actually formulated myself, and I've been putting that through rigors, through different testings and things like that. And guess what? I will give you all an update later on this week because once again, it has been put to the test and it definitely did not disappoint. I will give you all that update in another video, but for right now, we are going to be using the liquid seaweed. Now, prior to using the liquid seaweed, we came in and we used a fish fertilizer. Now, fish fertilizer, a lot of people don't like the smell, but name one fertilizer. I don't care what the brand is. Name one fertilizer that does not have a scent to it. And to me, when you smell all of that goodness, and I say goodness because it's organic matter that has been broken down, you know that it's definitely going to do the job that it's supposed to do, which is either produce foliage or produce beautiful blooms or correct the situation, if you will. So for me, it doesn't necessarily bother me about the smell when it comes to fertilizer. So we are going to be fertilizing both of these here. And so the thing about it is with your seaweed fertilizer, you want to let them soak overnight, if you will. So I have 2 different containers here. So I have these 3, and look at the growth on these. Isn't this just beautiful? For both of them, actually. So when you fertilize with your maxi crop, it is calling for. Now, if we look at the directions, we're going to go with the indoor plants. Now, they do have one for the cuttings and rootings, but we're well past that stage. So we're going to water with the solution of 1 ounce to 1 gallon of water every week. I'm going to give it a good shake here. And we're going to use 2 tablespoons, and that will give us our ounce, right? Or it should get us slightly under, because 2 tablespoons is about 30 cc's, right? Or 30 milliliters. So that will equate to 1 ounce. Now also, let me get a bamboo stick to stir. One of the things to also keep in mind, you want to make sure that whatever specimen you are using is well hydrated. And to me, your seaweed fertilizer is going to have a fishy smell as well, because it comes from the sea. Also went and grabbed some trays, and I've showed these trays before. They're on my Amazon store. I'll also make sure that I link the seaweed fertilizer that I use on my Amazon store as well. So real quick, these go together very, very easy. So you actually want to take the ridges and put the ridges on the top here. There we go. So now you have your trays here. This one does not have any holes in it. And then we have our seedling tray. So we have a total of 4 cuttings that we're going to be using. And we're just going to, at this point, just break those off. Just like that. And we are going to take off the 2 lower leaves. This one right here, we're going to take these 2 leaves off as well. Now from here, we are going to use perlite. We're going to stick each cutting inside of the perlite. Before we stick each cutting inside of the perlite, we'll take the stem, we'll give it a fresh clip, stick it in a little bit of water, then a little bit of rooting hormone. Then from there, we stick it inside. You can cut the leaves before or after. you're going to cover your tray. And so I'm just going to work on these cuttings. I'll be sure to link the video where I talk about my hydrangea cuttings in detail in the description box.